In this report, we see them clarify there isn't official funding announcements yet from the province and the feds.
Correct.
How important was it that came out today?
It was actually really important because, when you're in negotiations with people, again, I'm feeling very positive about it, but when you're in negotiations with people, you don't scoop them like that and you wait until people have gone through their various decision-making bodies. You will notice in the report as well that there is a recommendation for a particular structure of a bid committee or a bid corporation, and even that structure has not been agreed to by everyone, but it was important for council to have that discussion in public about whether that structure makes sense if they want to move forward.
So why release the additional $1 million if you don't have the federal and provincial money yet?
No, we're not going to.
Recommendation number 4 says release the $1 million.
If you read the very, very top of the recommendations, all of the recommendations are only if the funding is secured from the others.
Number 6.
That's just a report back recommendation, which wasn't in the original, but I think they were still working on the versions. All council recommendations should have a report back date and next steps. And the next steps in this case, from reading the recommendation, are actually a couple things that council members have been asking for. So it's interesting that that's next in the work plan anyway, which is the approval of a robust, I think is the word they used, a robust public engagement plan, as well as a reporting structure for the BIDCO. I believe the BIDCO should report through the Priorities and Finance Committee to Council, but Council is going to have to make that decision.
You saw the report prior to it going up online today, and I'm guessing on the weekend. Out of curiosity, is the version that was posted this afternoon the same as the version that was supposed to be posted on Friday of last week?
That's my understanding. Council members only get the reports just an hour or two, sometimes a few hours before they're posted publicly. And so in this particular case, we got this report that you saw just at our afternoon break.
In the BIDCO attachment, there's talk about giving Canmore only one seat, and I know as a community they've talked about not wanting to get pulled along through this whole thing and kind of dragged along as you've got the mountains, so you're in for a penny, you're in for a pound. Is that kind of fair, only giving them one seat at the table on the BIDCO?
I haven't spoken with Mayor Barrowman in a while, but I understand that he went on the observer mission to Pyeongchang. They're really being treated as a partner in all of this, and I've certainly heard no complaints.
The significance of the public engagement, actually putting this before council, presumably tomorrow, as opposed to it wasn't in the report on the card.
Oh no, I think that was just because the wrong version was released. That was always the next step anyway, and I think it's coming to PFC just in a couple of weeks.
And what does robust look like to you? What do you have in mind?
What does it look like to me?
Yeah.
Actually, the Citizens View panel attachment actually is very helpful because it actually asks people, what do you want from engagement? And a small number of people want face-to-face engagement. I know that some members of council are interested in that. It's easy to do. And that most people were saying, give me as much information as possible online and make sure that I have the ability to give you my input online and that I know my input's going to be heard. And so I imagine that an engagement plan will do that, and we're pretty good at that now.
And would that be a month's worth, 2 months worth? You mentioned the vote in late spring. So.
Well, obviously we need to get really good feedback back prior to making a decision in June, but I also want that feedback to be based on what the funding commitments are. Not, again, just like if we do a plebiscite, it can't be generic because that doesn't get you a real answer. Just do a public opinion poll. It has to actually be based on this is how much the feds are going to give the city, this is how much the province is going to give the city, this is how much the IOC is going to give the city, this is what the city is in for, and this is what we think the benefit will be.
What can we expect from that? Like, is it a percentage formula or actual dollars in terms of this is how much Ottawa will give, how much the province will give?
Oh, you are so ahead.
How much it will cost the
city. You are so ahead on these negotiations. When the CBEC did their work, and what's interesting about this, let me back up for a second. What's really important about this is that we are going through this process in a very different way than anyone else ever has. So for example, when I met some of the other cities, when I was in Pyeongchang, they've set up their BIDCOs long ago, they're doing furious lobbying, they've done all of that, but they haven't actually done their feasibility studies yet. And we did it in reverse. Let's do the feasibility study, let's really work out the budget, let's do that in public, let's make sure people have a chance to see that. And so the work that's going on right now is the as I understand it, is the refinement of those budgets and conversations with the feds and the province as part of the bid work, if they actually participate in the bid, on, okay, so how much are we really talking about? What are we in for? How does that work with an existing policy? So presumably, if council agrees to move forward tomorrow, then much of the work over the next couple of months will be getting to those answers. That was a very long way of answering your question by saying, working on it.
Yeah, Calgarians, as part of the engagement process, will have a better sense of what they're potentially getting in for to say to you guys, yes or no.
I think they have to. You know, we have been through this entire thing extraordinarily transparent and not advocating for one side or the other, which certainly has created a vacuum for critics of the process to criticize every information release. But in reality, we have been more transparent, I think, than any bid has ever been. And we'll continue to do that. And part of that has to be, no one can say whether they want or don't want the Olympics until they have those numbers in front of them, I believe. And we've got to keep working on those numbers so we have something to present to council and to Calgarians.
Could you do one thing for me, just recap again the financial, what's really going to happen as far as the idea that the money is, that you talked about it
Sure.
being released against it?
Sure. The total budget for the bid is about $30 million, which is actually very low compared to recent bids. And it's roughly, not quite, but roughly one-third split between the Government of Canada, the Government of Alberta, and Calgary. Now, Calgary has already approved, we've already approved, $7 million. But $1 million has been held back for pending the federal and provincial bidding, the federal and provincial participation. So if we confirm the money from the federal and provincial governments, council will be asked tomorrow to release the $1 million that's been held back, as well as the additional $2.5 to take us up to our 1/3.